Hello, and welcome to the Mime Radio Show. I'm Karen Hoyer.
And I'm James Donlin. And as I always say, behind us, behind these two images, is the darkness. But in the darkness is our producer, the guy who makes this all happen, Michael Diaz. And Mike, we're so indebted to you for helping us create this podcast.
So what's on the menu today?
Well, I'm very excited about this. Our guest I've known, well, first I knew about, and actually I saw him perform in probably 1973, maybe, or four in San Francisco, in Berkeley, California. And since that time, we've become friends and actually have collaborated in different ways over the years. So let me introduce you to the man who said this, quote, "If I've learned anything, it is that we must work to create a condition where the marvelous can happen. For the marvelous can happen in the most unexpected ways. Doing little or nothing guarantees little or nothing. Partake in the world, and much is possible." Leonard Pitt. Our guest today is a true Renaissance man. Designer, painter, architect, sculptor, actor, writer, master teacher, and of course, a mime. He has been at the center of San Francisco's cultural landscape for over 60 years. Leonard Pitt was born in Detroit, Michigan. After a short career in advertising design, he sailed to Europe, landed in Paris in January 1963, and stayed for 7 years. While there, he studied mime with Etienne Decroux, becoming one of his early assistants and performing in his company. Leonard returned to the United States in 1970 and settled in Berkeley, California, where he opened a school of physical theater, attracting students from around the world. His one-man shows received critical acclaim, bringing many invitations to perform and teach at theaters and festivals throughout the United States, Europe, Brazil, New Zealand, and Australia. He was also a member of George Coates' Performance Works and traveled widely with the company. In 1972, he traveled to Bali to study Balinese mass theater and carving, where he was invited by his teacher to perform with him in local village and temple festivals. Later, he co-founded Life on the Water, a contemporary theater in San Francisco, presenting new work. Next was Eco-Rap, an environmental education program combining ecology and rap music as a way to educate inner city youth about urgent social issues. Leonard has written several books, among them 2 Walking Guides to Paris, one on the life of a 17th century Anglo-Irish healer, and his latest, a memoir, My Brain on Fire, Paris and Other Obsessions. I also might mention he is the co-founder of the Berkeley Chocolate Club, meeting monthly to critique the world of dark chocolate. So many chocolates, so little time, its mantra goes. In 2009, having been a colleague of Leonard for decades, Leonard and I joined together to open the first Flying Actor studio in San Francisco, offering a conservatory-style program in the art of physical theater. And with that, let's meet the man himself. Let's welcome in Leonard Pitt.
Okay, there it gets working. Hey.
Hi, Leonard.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Wow, Leonard.
You're in Switzerland, right? Is that
right in Europe somewhere?
Where are you?
I'm sitting in my garden behind my house. We're looking at my creation. I'm going to stand up. Ooh, standing up isn't what it used to be at my tender age. This is a cottage I built in 1996. When I had the idea to build this, I didn't know what I wanted it to look like, but I knew I wanted my structure. I knew what I wanted it to feel like. I wanted it to feel warm, soft, and delicious. And then I had to figure it out. What did that mean? And basically, I knew it needed a peaked roof, not a flat roof. And I had to break the straight line. So if you look at all the lines on the roof, around the windows, there's a slight curve. Nothing is perfectly straight. And if you kill the straight line, it softens it without being noticeable.
And you show us the turret, like pan to your left.
Other way.
Other way.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
that's the bathroom.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Berkeley, California, in Leonard Pitt's backyard.
Now we're going to walk into the house.
The house is charming.
Thank you. going to walk in the house, up my stairs. Few people.
How long have you lived in this house? I guess since 1973. No, not quite.
No, 70. I bought the house in 1979.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
And before that time, you were in the Shattuck Avenue studio, right?
Well, I was there from 1970 to 1988.
Yeah. Huh.
Gotta get this set up here. Okay. Here we are. Great. So
welcome. So good that you're here with us, Leonard.
Thank you.
On our list from the beginning. So
great. My great pleasure.
But we knew that if we waited long enough, you'd have more adventures to tell us about. So we.
Well, you know, my motto is one of them is "Don't get me started." That'll be the title to my next book. Don't get me started. Too many stories.
And you are writing two new books right now, aren't you?
Well, since you mentioned one here, I got a mock-up of the cover.
Wow.
Oh, The Art of Mask by Leonard Pitt. Is that a Balinese mask?
That's a Balinese mask that I own. So I've written this little book. It's not hugely long, but on how you make a mask come to life. Got my history in there.
We'll talk about that a little later.
Sure. Yeah. And then the other book I'm writing, I've got a grandson who's 11 years old, and it's a long story. Basically, I fought his coming into the world for many reasons because of the difficulties surrounding his being. But the moment I saw him, my life was transformed. And now I get him 5 days a week. He sleeps over twice a week. And I'm writing a book, Miles and Me, the first 10 years. His name is Miles. It's an extraordinary story of how he changed my life.
And you told us that you're working on a piece with him?
Well, yes. We performed at that show last February that James produced in San Francisco. I brought him up to do a couple of magic tricks. And about a month later, he said, "Papa, I want to become a clown. I want to make people laugh."
Oh, that's wonderful. It's like the next generation, Leonard.
So we've got an idea for a show. We've got the music. It'll only be about 3 minutes long. But we've got a couple of props. We got to get a couple of costume items. And, I'm working on a show with Wendy Parkman and Judy Finelli.
Oh.
A clown show that we are writing. And Miles and I will be the opening for the show.
Wow. And for those of you that don't know, Wendy Parkman Judy Finelli is one of the founders, if not the founder, of the Circus Center, right? And
yeah.
She was a world-class juggler in her youth, and then Wendy was a former original member of the Pickle Family Circus.
Right.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah. So we're doing this show.
Apart from the fact that you're still creating wonderful pieces, it's very inspiring for young people to know that the connections that you make when you're younger, they can last a long time, and you can continue to perform and create with people that have been in your lives for a long time. That's inspiring.
Yes, absolutely.
So we want to go back to the beginning, sort of.
Okay.
Because the question that we always start with is, how does the mime performer prepare backstage? What do you do before you go on stage? Do you have a specific thing that you say to yourself, or something that you do, or a process that you complete right before you step on stage?
And even to the millisecond before you go on, what's happening?
How many hours do you have? My answer is simple. 0.
And ladies and gentlemen, I know this for a fact because I've been with Leonard a few times right before he goes on stage.
So you don't have any particular ritual. You're ready.
0 as in 0. I might go like this, and that's it. I go on. As long as I know my material. And
what's going on up here? Anything up here?
Right. And I know what I got to do. Yeah.
And where does that come from, Leonard? Where have you always been like that, or is there a
Always.
philosophy?
No, no philosophy. No. Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Be there, do it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Have you received any critique of that over the years from people who think they might know something that's better for you?
No, because it isn't the kind of thing that I've ever discussed with anybody. Nobody's ever asked me, what do you do before a performance? You know?
No. Everybody has a sort of a different process. I think it's very personal. And, but I find it very interesting to see, some people have really elaborate rituals, and then others are like, they're ready to go.
Well, that's what makes the beauty of the universe. We're all different.
What, speaking about the universe of the performance, do you have a feeling about what the audience represents to you? Not necessarily, or who they are, not necessarily are they kids, are they adults, are they this age, are they that age? Do they live in, Berkeley? Do they live in Kansas City? I mean, do you have a sense about that dynamic between the performer and the other, which is that public, that audience? Is that any significance at all? That audience?
No. I'm terribly simple. I'm sorry. All I want to do is go out and have a good time and connect.
Gosh, this is really funny because James told me, Leonard, he likes to talk, but so far we've made our questions really long and your answers are really
you're right,
good.
Right. No, I love to connect with people. That's the bottom line. And I will do it any way I can. Like at our magic show, the performance that Miles and I did last February in our show in the city, as you might remember, James. I don't know if you could see it from where you were, though. Did you remember the couple of magic tricks Miles and I did?
I could only hear it from backstage. I didn't actually see it.
Let's see if I can. He had a magic trick he was trying to teach me. I don't know where it is. Let me see if I can find it around here. Where is it? Oh, I know. He wanted this. He was going to teach me how to do this. Okay. So I try it with various people, even on the street or at the cafe. So he says, I'm going to make this disappear. I'm going to stuff it into my hand just like this. I'm going to stuff it in my hand just like this. And then I got to blow on it 3 times. He says 3 times, and it's going to disappear. And I don't know if it'll work, but like, whoa, where is it? It worked. Oh my God, it worked. God, that's great. That is great. Miles did it again. He did it again. So I got a bunch of these things. I carry them in my pocket. And I'll see a kid in the cafe. I'll just walk over. I'll say, want to see a magic trick? Here's another one. That's a great one for kids. I can take off my finger, Jimmy. See that? Watch that. Whoop. They love it. I should do kid parties.
Tell us, Leonard, just briefly, tell us about the cafe, because I think that's an important, this particular cafe, I think it's an important part of your life, but also derivative of your past, having been in Europe. Where is this cafe you're talking about? And what is that a temple for you? Is that your church? What are we?
Well, I lived in Paris for 7 years. When you're poor, you live in the cafe, because the French never invite people over to their house. They never, maybe they do now, but then no one ever did. And their places were shabby and dilapidated and small. So you met at the cafe. And I went to the cafe every day to meet friends. It became a way of life. When I moved here to Berkeley in 1970, great, there were cafes. I went to the cafe. So I got this cafe 2 minutes from my house. I've been going there for 40 years, 8 days a week. I get there about 8:30, and I'll stay for hours. I've written my books there. I meet people there. And it's a way of life. It's great to be in public and to be in community. I think isolation kills. It's terrible. Above all, as we get older, I'm 81 years old this year. And thank you. As we get older, just by the course of life, we will probably become more isolated. That's terrible. And you need people around you. And it's great, as I discovered when I was young, seeing in a cafe, you're writing, you're doing something personal, but you're in a public space, and it's that combination. Of course, we love to watch people, don't we? Love to watch people. You got them all day long.
So Leonard, tell us. I'm sorry. Go ahead,
James.
Let
me just finish off. So this connection you have for people, I think probably plays in your performance. In other words, when I asked you a few minutes ago what the public meant to you, what the audience meant to you, but it's really this interaction of this dynamic between people that is interesting to you and is magical for you, correct?
Of course, you want to connect. That's the essence of life, connection. It's a form of intimacy. As I say, you can walk into Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, and all of a sudden you become quiet because you feel a closeness to your surroundings. It's important where you are. And that's a kind of intimacy out of this huge, huge interior. Well, we feel that with people. We feel that with spaces. Your favorite armchair at home. And that's the one thing we all crave is intimacy in every form, not just physical intimacy, but intimacy in relations. Talking with someone. And that's what I like in a performance. I like make that connection. Make that connection. Yes.
Yeah. It's very gratifying for the audience and for the performer to feel that back and forth.
That is life.
Tell us a little bit about why you chose to go to Paris, how you ended up studying with Decroux, and then where your journey went from there.
Well, I began in a career of advertising design, working for one of the world's biggest advertising agencies in Detroit as an apprentice. And I had a great career in front of me. I went to one of the finest art schools in the country in Los Angeles called the Art Center School. Got a job at this agency, and there I was. But once I got in there and saw how boring it was, utterly, utterly boring, I said, no. And I had been doing mime as a hobby.
Why was it boring? Talk to me about why that didn't agree with you.
Well, there was no creativity. You know what changed everything? The Beatles. The Beatles. When the Beatles hit, they were just a signature of a huge cultural change. Like when I went to Paris, I arrived there in January of 1963. I came back in 1965 to Detroit to my family. I was surprised to see the entire visual of the city had changed. There was much more color, buses, signs, just everything was more lively. And the Beatles were part of that. It was a new take on things that brought a life to things and an interest. And in advertising, all of a sudden, it became much more creative. And had I started a couple years later, I might have just stuck with it. But when I was doing it, you just did this and you did this, and they didn't want anything creative. So I said, come on. So I was so bored. I heard about this man named Etienne Decroux. And I knew
Leonard, just a minute, you said that you had been doing mime before that. What type
I was doing white-faced pantomime in coffee houses in Detroit. I had a white face, red lips, black leotard, and I don't even remember what I did. But there was a coffee house. What the heck was it called? I got
What would have been your first I don't want to say role model particularly, but
influence.
In order to be with the white face and the red, like what?
Well, I saw Marceau. I saw Marceau on television when I was 12 years old.
Like
I was inspired, and then I just started doing it, and I did it in a couple of coffee houses, and then I heard that Decroux was teaching in New York. I knew he was Marceau's teacher, and I had a 2-week vacation at my office from the ad agency. I said, I'm going to New York. I went to New York and I found Decroux, and he was teaching in his apartment living room. If you can imagine the master in a little tiny living room in Midtown Manhattan. So I knocked on the door. Madame Decroux answered, let me in. I sat down. I took classes. I didn't know what the heck he was talking about. He didn't speak. He never learned English. He was in America for 5 years. He never learned English. And people were translating. But I remember the very first day I'm sitting there. And this woman translates, and the crew gets up, is talking, and she says, the crew says, today's Monday. It's improvisation. Oh, okay, I'm sitting there. And then he looks at me and says, why don't you go? And she says, he wants you to get up and do something. I said, here, I'm my first day. I'm supposed to improvise. I said, what do I do? She said, do whatever you want. So I didn't know what to do. And lucky for me, I picked a phrase of music to move to. The rump, the rump, the rump, da, 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 rump. I forget who that is. Some Swedish or somebody. And then I just took off from there. Well, little did I know that rhythm was perfect in keeping with the crew's mime. And when I was done, he said it was better than he expected. Wow. That's all I needed. So I did the 2 weeks, and that was his last 2 weeks in America after 5 years. He went back to Europe. That was October.
Do you remember what it cost to take that workshop in those years?
No, I don't.
That would be interesting. Now, was the crew, do you think the crew was expecting to maybe stay in USA for a long period of time?
No,
what was his
motivation? 5 years is pretty good.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. I mean, he must have had some kind of motivation to see if he could make it.
Well, he taught in Texas for quite a while.
I didn't know that.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And they wanted to set him up permanently there, and he didn't want to.
Was that a university or someplace?
Yeah, university. I forget exactly where. Tom Lebhart would know those details.
Oh, yes, because he mentioned some film, and I was like, why is it from Texas? Yeah.
Oh, well, that could be. Yeah. But at the end of my 2 weeks, he was going back to Paris. Oh, no, I was with him in August of 1962.
Wow.
So I go back to Detroit, go back to my job. He sailed back to Europe, goes to Paris. The following October, I gave up my job and I sailed to Europe. Now, of course, on the way, and this is a whole other story.
And you literally sailed. You were on a boat.
I sailed on the Queen Elizabeth I to Southampton. And where did I go from there? It's good we've got like 3 hours to do this. I went to Ireland to do a favor for Stan Laurel.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
Laurel and Hardy?
Yes.
I knew Stan Laurel.
Wow.
I sat in his living room with him on 3 occasions.
In Hollywood, correct?
Well, in
Santa Monica.
Santa Monica, yeah, on Ocean Avenue, 849 Ocean Avenue. I mean, when I went to school out in LA, before I got that job in the ad agency, went to school in LA, I've been a fan of Laurel and Hardy all my life. I look him up in the phone book because I knew he was there. I knew he was alive. I look at him, and there he is. And me, too young to know fear, I was 19. I called him up. He answers the phone. I said, Mr. Laurel, I've been a fan of yours all my life. Can I come visit you? He said, sure. I'd have you over tomorrow. It's Friday, but the fights are on. He said, why don't you come Saturday morning, 10 o'clock? Saturday morning, I get to his place. Oh, my God. I don't want to go into the details, but he told me 2 fabulously interesting things. One about Charlie Chaplin and one about Jerry Lewis. He came to America in 1910 in the Fred Carnell Pantomime Company with Charlie Chaplin. They were in the same company. And so here they come to America. They get very big. One day, he gets a package in the mail addressed to Charlie Chaplin. He goes, what? He calls Chaplin up on the phone. Come on over. Goes over, gives him the package. They spent the whole day reminiscing. Afterwards, Laurel called him many, many times, and Chaplin would never return his phone call.
Really? Oh, dear.
He was very sad. We're sitting on the couch. He's telling me this.
Oh.
Sad. But then one day we're sitting there and he gets another package in the mail. He opens it up. It's from Jerry Lewis.
Uh-huh.
Now, I didn't tell this in this way for over 50 years. And you're going to find out why. And it's a real film. He says, come on, let's take a look at it. He reaches into a cabinet, pulls out a 16 millimeter Bell & Howell movie camera, puts it on the kitchen table, and projects the film onto the refrigerator. And here we are. He lived in a small apartment. We're in this tiny kitchen. I'm as close to him as I am to you right now. We're watching. He said, so Lewis comes on, hey, Stan, I'm in the studio. We're shooting the Bellboy. I got this guy doing an impersonation of you. Tell me what you think. The guy comes on, does his thing. I didn't think it was very good, and nor did Laurel. But he said to me, you know what? I never liked doing that.
Really? Wow.
He said, I just like doing it. I mean, I just did it because I knew the audience liked it.
Interesting.
Or more so, we chatted about Lewis and he said, you know, I never liked his comedy. He was too much like a pack of wild horses running off in different directions.
Interesting.
That's what he told me. But they were great friends. Lewis loved
this was part of your inspiration to take the boat to
Oh
Europe.
no. Because then I wanted to get away from advertising, and I thought I had to go to Europe just to clean my brain out. I didn't think I'd stay for years. I knew Ducreux was in Paris. I'll stop there. But on the way there, as I say, I stopped in Ireland to do the favor for Stan Laurel. To make a very long story short, when they went on tour to Europe, to Great Britain in 1953, their first stop was Dublin, but their ship docked right near Cork, a little town called Cove, C-O-B-H. And as the boat comes in, they see tons of people on the docks and parties of people in boats, all cheering. And they didn't know what was going on. And as Laurel said to me, I thought the bloody Pope was there. But on the hill overlooking this little town, there was a cathedral, St. Colman's Cathedral. And all of a sudden, the bells began playing. On the cathedral bells.
Oh
It was the most, as he told me, it was the most touching moment of their career. They had tears in their eyes. They got on deck. The Lord Mayor of Cork was there, all the officials, hundreds of kids. They wanted to go to the bakeries and get some cream pies and do some slapstick, but they couldn't because all the bakeries were closed. The whole town closed down to meet them. So they had to leave too soon to get to Dublin. They never saw any press or any photos. So I was going to Europe. I said, heck, I'll go there. I'll get the press for you. I went to Cork. I got a copy of the photos. They didn't have Xerox machines in those days. I had a hand copy of the news article. And people in those days, there was no tourism. People say, so what brings you to Cork? I said, well, I'm doing a favor for Stan Laurel. This is 9 years later. You being a friend of Mr. Laurel's? Well, have you met so-and-so? He was there that day. It was like it happened yesterday. And they start taking me around to meet have you met Dr. Gebrewers, the man who played the bells? They made an appointment for me. I got on a train Sunday night, went out, had to meet him on the church steps after Sunday Mass. He takes me in the cathedral. He says, you being a friend of Mr. Laurel's, would you like me to play the bells tonight? I wouldn't normally do it. Now, and he couldn't play me their music because he got in trouble playing their music on the bells. But he had his friend Charlie take me on a walk around the village. He played the bells, played Charlie Boy. And
so eventually you got to Paris.
I get to Paris, yes.
Okay.
And what was it like studying with Mr. Ducreux?
Well, it was incredible. You know, you study in a basement. It was a converted coal bin. You went to his house, a house that was built by his father in the suburbs of Paris, Boulogne-Billancourt, to the west of Paris, at the end of the metro line. And his father was a brick mason. He built this little 2-story brick house at the end of a garden. tiny kitchen, and downstairs in the basement was the coal bin, which they converted into a studio. You couldn't even put your arm up all the way because it was too low. And had 5 students when I got there. Then there were, but and classes were 6 days a week. I mean, Ducreux is what they call in French a sacred monster, a monstre sacré. He's a great personality with great renown and a great history, but he's a difficult person. You don't want to get too close. A sacred monster. And he was like that. But for our students, he gave us everything. He gave us everything.
How long were the classes of like a session last? I don't think.
It was like an hour and a half.
Only an hour and a half.
Yeah, only an hour and a half. But if you were in the company, as I was, just a few months after he started teaching and I started taking classes, he asked me to be in his company. So we had an extra hour and a half or 2 hours, like several days a week. And then he asked me to become his assistant very soon. And I taught the new students. So I was there on the average of 4 hours a day, 6 days a week.
What do you think Ducreux's place in, I mean, this is kind of a silly, no, it's not a silly question, but what, from your viewpoint, what's Ducreux's place in the arc of theater and not necessarily mime, but theater? What do you think?
Well, I think today he's largely forgotten.
Yeah.
Who knows Ducreux? I mentioned to a young girl, I met a young girl just this morning who came from the East Coast. She's in a theater company on the East Coast in Hartford, Connecticut, I believe. And, she's a working actress. She didn't know Antonin Artaud.
No.
No, didn't know. So, a
lot of young students don't know those names, actually.
Of course. So who knows Ducreux? No one knows Ducreux, but he had his place. And
what is that place, do you think? I'm just curious what your perception is.
Well, he brought a certain variety of physical performance to the American stage. Like in many aspects of his body, it was a ballet body. He didn't like anything that was character driven, shoulders up, head, spine, no. The ballet body, long and sleek, shoulders down and back. But his movement was very grounded, and that was very different from anything going on in American or European stage movement. He always talked about being on the ground, and all of his movement had that quality to it.
Did you find that was a shock to you? Were you expecting that at that time?
No, I wasn't expecting. I went to his school expecting to do illusion pantomime.
Right.
That's what I was expecting. Even after spending those 2 weeks with him in New York, I thought in Paris, because I knew he was teacher of Marceau, illusion. And I get there and I find all this abstract stuff, but I found it fascinating. I mean,
did it fit in your brain as a designer, as a visual artist? Were there relationships that for you personally that you could
definite because you're working with the visual. You've got to be clear, and you're working with the geometry of space, and you're working with design of the body, and then learning the body, how to incline the bust, head, neck, and chest. You can't see me, but I'm not moving my waist. Okay, here's my neck, here's my head, neck, and waist. Chest, neck, head. There's translations, as he would call it.
Yeah.
And to take apart the body in that way, which no one had ever done in the West.
It kind of fits into your architectural brain too.
Well, yes, and then also when I saw the Balinese, I saw the same movements.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
But there would be a different mental component to the Balinese work, right?
Completely.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you one quick question about some photographs that are on your website. There's some beautiful photographs of you in different corporeal mime designs. Is that from your time when you were in the company?
No, those are taken here in Berkeley when I set up teaching in June of 1970, I thought people have to know what I do. So I created a show of DeCrew's abstract mime. I was just wearing a loincloth, nothing else.
Yeah.
I saw that performance. That's where I first saw Leonard in person. Yeah.
What was the reaction to the American students to this that when you started to teach it?
I got a lot of students right away. My studio was full. And it was great. You know, young people in those days were willing to try anything to stretch their mind and their imagination. And a lot of people who had no intention of really going into theater were just interested in doing mime because it was different and it was new. And it would be.
They had to go somewhere. They had to actually walk somewhere.
Yeah.
Or travel to do it. They couldn't look at a screen and get a taste of it.
Of course. Yeah. So, I did that, and it was enormously exciting. Were
you starting to create performances at that point too?
Well, that's all. Yes, I was saying. So people had to know what I do. So I created this show called 3 Pieces, and it was 3 pieces of abstract mime. And I don't know, maybe it was 30, 45 minutes. I was on a stage alone. I had no music, no light cues, nothing, just a body on a stage in a loincloth doing abstract movement. And I did it a lot. I did it in San Francisco. I did it in Berkeley. And that's what that photo is from. Yeah.
I think that's a quote that I remember reading. I'm not sure if I can get it exactly right, that DeCrew actually said that a person should be able to just stand on the stage with just their body and the audience will burst into applause because the body has so much potential for.
Correct.
Like maybe you don't need lighting cues or music or everything. It's the.
So wait, I got to plug my computer in here. Oh, I got to plug my.
What happened?
No, I went outside. When I was outside, I unplugged my computer.
Oh, your battery. We don't want you to die.
Okay, there we are. Okay, now
Leonard, this period of time in France, you created some sculptures, correct?
Well, I did, and I have part of one.
Show us one. Yeah,
well,
tell us how this came about during that period.
This was actually much larger. It was hanging in my living room and it fell and it broke, but this is part of it.
Wow.
So this all fits in the world of DeCrew, I think. I think, the sense of geometry and linear and vectors of energy and so forth.
You got it. I love working with my hands. Actually, I used to make little screens. I've got one in my living room. Actually, I would make flat screens made out of balsa wood and Japanese rice paper, and I would sell them for $1. I mean, I was a poor, starving student. I sold the New York Times on the street. I made 4 cents a newspaper.
Yeah, there's a wonderful photograph of you selling the Times on a Paris street.
Yeah, that's at Montmartre. I'm standing in Montmartre.
And then there was the photos of the cape. You wearing?
Yeah.
So how did you perceive yourself at that time? You had a pipe too, I think.
Yeah. I got the cape upstairs. Well, cape, they're beautiful. I just loved it for the movement. I love movement. You wrap it around, you put it on, you do this, you do that. Of course, it's wonderful.
And what was the pipe? What was that?
Well, I used to smoke a pipe, and I just enjoyed it. I smoked cigarettes too in those days, but I loved the pipe. It was kind of thoughtful.
There's a certain attitude to a pipe, right?
Different than a cigarette.
Yes.
Yeah. You say that the crew. Would you say that the crew form at that point was also thoughtful or not?
I'm not sure what that means, thoughtful. You had to think about what you were doing. I'm not sure I would say thoughtful. It was something.
What was the audience reaction to it? Were they like, oh, I don't get this. I'm frustrated with this.
Well, with my show, you mean my show? Mm-hmm. When people saw posters for a mime performance, they expected whiteface and fun. And a number of people brought kids. And I had 3 pieces. And after the first piece, I could hear a bunch of people leaving. This is on the first night. And I could hear baby stroller wheels squeaking as they went out. So about a third of the audience left.
Great metaphor.
And then I did the second piece, and I heard another chunk of the audience leave when it was over. And then I began the third piece, and I said to the audience, it's a good thing there's only 3 pieces to the show. Because if there were 4, they would have all been gone by the end of the third one.
So what triggered your shift? Because I know you shifted into a different kind of performance, partly maybe because of your trip to Bali, which you can talk about, but what shifted in your mind to start evolving as an artist into these very adventurous, very eclectic performances that you did with George Coates and other forms, you know?
Well, first of all, I did my first show with George in 1977, but I'd gone to Bali in 1973, and that was the great shock. And I can only wish every artist or budding artist would have a shock of that sort. Here I was doing my abstract decru mime, had classes full, and I heard Balinese performing, and I thought, gee, I'll go. I didn't know what to expect. Sitting in the audience before the curtain went up, I said to my friend, if this is boring, let's leave in the middle. And what I saw was so spectacular. When I walked out of the theater, I was a changed person. I mean, the music, that percussive rhythm was just mesmerizing.
Yeah, it goes in waves, you know that.
Yes. And then to see the relationship of the dancer to the music is something we've never seen in the West at all, in any country. In ballet, in modern dance, the dancer and the music are like 2 currents running next to each other. In Bali, they bounce off each other because it's all percussive. Bang, bang, bang. And the gamelan orchestra is taking cues. They're playing off the dancer. So that was exciting. And then to see the mass dance, oh my God, this wonderful dancer, Jimat, with the tiniest movements. And I knew all the stuff. I'm looking, I go, I know that language, but it's in a whole different context. So I said, this is too exciting. I'm going to Bali. I didn't even think of studying. I didn't know you could. I just wanted to go and see the culture that produced this wonderful art. And when I get there, I find out you can study. Oh my God. And with Kakul. And we studied, in Bali, I don't know what it was like now, but they had no weekends. So you studied 7 days a week.
Wow.
Taught me the dance, and after a month, he says, I want you to perform with me.
So you're going to 2 opposite points of the compass in the world. You're going to the hub of Western civilization, Paris, and then you go all the way around the world to this more primal, ritualistic, such a different atmosphere of culture, and you got these 2 things coming together.
And then, the half masks here. This is a Balinese half mask.
Ah.
Yeah.
I'll put it on for you.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
Oh.
Oh. Oh my goodness.
And the eyes are crucially important, aren't they?
Of course. I write about that in my book.
Yeah.
Crucial. The placement of the eyes in the hole. I won't get into it, but it's crucial.
Is that something they would have, is that something you picked up on your own?
No, they didn't know. They didn't teach me any.
You just watch.
Here. Where is, here. Okay. I studied this mask, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the name of that mask?
Penisar. He's the prime minister.
Right.
He wanted to become a king, but he didn't make it, so he's angry. Okay. So, you've got your whole face. I've got that. Where is it? Here. Here it is. You see the holes on the back of the mask?
Yes. Yeah, very small.
That's all you can see. So you don't see much.
Because the eyes are painted on, and you're looking out down below. Yeah. Oh my goodness, what a transformation.
So
And there's so much to talk about. There's a I don't want to call it a system, but there's a pattern and there's a way of being, a placement of the body and soul, and that you can almost understand objectively while you're in the character. Correct? You understand what I'm saying?
No.
You're not possessed by the mask, but there's a real consciousness of, like when I watch you work, there's a real consciousness of placement of the hands, placement of the head.
Oh yeah.
There's a map of how to get to the destination.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about how you're feeling. There's this other thing that's involved with.
My teacher Kakul, in doing that dance, he taught me all the specific moves to do for the dance.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It was very specific. But the half mask, see, when I left Bali and came back here, I brought a bunch of masks with me. A lot of them were half masks. Now, I did have an experience of dancing in Bali with a half mask, because I had a friend who was actually a student of mine who came to Bali. He also studied with Kakul. Kakul didn't ask him to dance in his company. He asked me. But Tom and I were invited by a village to dance for the village with their gamelan orchestra. This is in a day before electricity, before flush toilets. I mean, it was primitive, mm-hmm. And they had kerosene lamps, lighting up our. So they asked us to perform. So Tom and I, what are we going to do? We had a bunch of half masks. We talked about, well, you come out, we'll do this. We planned something. We're going to use our voice. And I got out there, and 2 seconds into it, I go, wait a minute. No matter what I say, they're not going to understand. How am I going to connect with the audience? My mm-hmm. jokes don't mean anything. So I had to be strongly visual and rhythmic and use my voice very musically. And that was my introduction to the voice. So when I came back to this country with all those Balinese masks and masks that I made, here's another one I made.
Ah, wow.
What's that made out of, Leonard?
Celastic.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So this material is outlawed today. You can't use it anymore.
Yeah, I know that. I have some of those.
A toxic material.
Yeah, right. Yeah. This is like 40 years old. Yeah.
But it's interesting, Leonard, because the crew is a system, and the Balinese tradition is a system also in terms of like the way you move, but then you can take that system and you can, like you just explained, improvise with that system underneath you, sort of. Of
course. Yeah. Well, when I came back here and had all those masks, I turned my whole teaching around and based it on the mask.
Oh.
And then I had to figure out, how am I going to teach this? And what do you do with the mask? And how do you find the character? And then I began finding all this wonderful language. Like all of a sudden, as I say in my book, with the shoulders, they can be up, forward, back, and down. Mm-hmm. And the head can be forward or back. And you got this language of the body I began to explore. So I began playing with that in 73. In 75, I went back to Paris and visited the crew. Mm-hmm. And I took some of my Balinese masks.
Oh, wow.
And this was like he's looking at the stuff from another planet. Because this is character. The crew hated character. If you're going to do a piece on suffering, we don't want to see an individual suffering. You're doing grand suffering of humanity. Okay? And I'm showing him these character masks, and one of them he even put on, and he tried to move, but you could tell he was very uncomfortable because he didn't know what to do. Didn't know what to do. So all of a sudden, I was into a world of character.
Mm-hmm. So shortly after you started working with George Coates, and you talk to us about some of those performances that you would have done in the late 70s,
Well, George was a bona fide crazy guy in the best.
Is he part of the Hawkeyes, or is that different?
Yeah, yes, he was one of the Hawkeyes, the Blake Street Hawkeyes.
Yeah.
Out of came Whoopi Goldberg. She was a Hawkeye for a time.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. She did Berkeley. Yeah. But George and I put together a show called 2019 Blake. And we took the title because that was the address of the building where we created the piece.
Was that sort of concrete wall? I think I saw that show in this. Was it a kind of an austere, kind of empty?
Well, it was like, yeah, it was just a room with concrete walls and floor and.
How would you characterize the piece, this piece that you started out creating? Was it
it was non-linear.
Yeah.
I did several shows with George and they're all non-linear. There's no story. Mm-hmm. There's no motif that runs through it that you can identify. It's what was called in those days performance art. Mm-hmm. And it's what I call theater of transition. With George and I, and he had the eye for this much better than I did. You want to create an image. Maybe I've got a prop or just moving and create an image that resonates with the audience. And then after that image, we're going to create a new image. It might be totally different. I got a different prop, different costume item, but it's a transition from image one to image two that is crucial. Because if you create a really strong image and you go into the next image and the transition is weak, then you've got to start all over again. If you got a strong image and the transition is strong, you carry that energy into the next image and you're building on it and it's combining and it's getting stronger and stronger. And then you go into the next image and you carry that with you. It's really a transition. And we did this stuff. It was totally non-linear. And I can't tell you the success we had.
It's so interesting because I think actors or movement artists are familiar with the idea of creating an image, and then they say, well, I have this image, then image. How are we going to get from here to here? And that transitional part is like the last thing that they think of. Whereas that's a very important part of.
That's the blood of the performance.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you the success of the show. So George and I were in the studio for a month, I don't know, 4 or 5 days a week. We created it together. Okay. We did 3 runs of that show, 1 in Berkeley and 2 in San Francisco. And the last run in San Francisco was in an old church. It was a series of midnight shows. And the last show on the last night had a waiting list of 100 people. So I did a 1:30 a.m. show for those 100 people.
Fantastic.
And you think a show like that would play today with the same impact?
Of course.
And why aren't more people doing that, do you think?
Because no one's as crazy as George.
But you played a part in that too, correct?
Well, I did, yeah. But George had me doing a lot of things I never would have done on my own. Because his imagination was much wilder than mine.
We would say design, the crew, Bali, and George Coates were the influences at that time for you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah,
sure. Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, George now is pretty much a recluse. And on the 40th anniversary of 2019 Blake, I said, George, I bumped into him on the street. Let's do it again. But it never happened.
Yeah. And so what would you say, given this body of work and its resonance for you, how would you just, like in a sentence or two, how would you describe what you did with that period of history, of theater history?
Follow your imagination.
Follow your imagination.
Oh, yeah.
Do you feel like you were like taking the audience on a journey with you, or what was that? How did you want to connect with the audience?
Well, again, I did my work in the studio, creating something. I bring it to the audience, and I want to do everything I can to embrace them and to connect with them. That's all. Mm-hmm. I'm not thinking much of the audience when I'm in the studio working.
Mm-hmm.
We're just working, building a show.
How They're just kind of antithetical. Many people, they're just like, oh, how am I going to do this so that people really like it or people really laugh, or and they are really centered on how's the audience going to react, as opposed to, this is in my head and I want to get it out there so that I can share it.
Well, when I'm working with people, I coach a lot. And I'm doing private coaching now, one on Zoom and one in person. But I will look at someone working and I see the intention of what they want to express. And then I can see whether they're hitting it 100% or they're getting it 90%. So as a performer, I'm aware of my intention and I want to make sure that it comes across 100%.
Yes.
So that's just, and I hope my skill allows me to do that.
In today's world of clown, let's say, theater clown is becoming a really big deal right now. There's workshops in clown everywhere. Mime, not so much. Of course, we all know that mime is reflected in many different styles and versions. It's not just the white face, which is the general public's viewpoint of it. But do you think the clown of today and the mime of today has integrity, or is there something missing?
Oh, I can't even say. I wouldn't know what to say.
Yeah. And why
I just see some people working and I go, oh, nah, he's doing it like this. It's got to be like this. Or he's doing it like this and it's got to be like that. And I could give specific examples, but I don't want to name names. But I find it very interesting.
Well, and it's also one of the things that we were talking about with Tom Lebhart was the idea of study and intense study. I mean, the amount of time that you spent studying these different art forms, as opposed to now where people go to, a 3-hour workshop and then start performing. They don't have the depth of or discipline. Maybe that's a part of it too.
I mean, in some ways, the world is moving too fast for an art to be studied properly. I don't know. I feel that. What do you think about that?
Well, I would tend to agree. Speed, I've written about this in my
What's this one? You have to read the title for us.
Bring it closer, Leonard. Bring it closer.
My Brain on Fire. Oh, this is kind of like a memoir.
Yeah.
I want to read that. I want to read that, by the way, because I was looking at it on your website. It's at the chapters, that you have on your, and I thought it was really interesting.
So
I've got a whole chapter on speed, which is a modern invention.
Just a minute. My birthday's next month, so I want you to give me a gift, Leonard. Anyway, keep talking. All right.
So we are, as a culture, we're addicted to speed, moving fast across the earth, and just going fast, and that takes us to a level of things being extreme. Whoever thought there'd be a place called Extreme Pizza? That exists. There's Extreme Home Makeover. There's kitty crayons called Extreme Colors. We're addicted to extremes and intensity, and that undercuts learning, I believe, because it takes time.
Does that mean you're against progress? Meaning that, for example, you've written a lot about Paris and how you've been frustrated and disturbed by how the architecture of Paris has changed. So is this an indictment of progress or something else?
Well, progress is just a word. Show me what the progress is.
Okay.
They just passed a new law in Paris yesterday. And
what is that? What is the law they passed?
They've reestablished height limits on building in Paris. No more than 37 meters, which means 7 stories. They took apart that law some years ago so they could build skyscrapers, and they started to do it. And it's too bad I can't show you pictures of the most recent one done about a year ago. A huge excrescence of abnormality. And now they just passed this law reestablishing height limits. So that's progress. So you say progress is just a word. In Paris, a lot of the city fathers and mothers They think Paris is old-fashioned. Can you believe it? And that's why they'll do modern anywhere they can get away with it. If they can't do it big, then they'll do it small. Sure. But don't get me started.
So, well, I'll get you a little bit started. Maybe we'll go around the block. So this idea of speed, things moving too fast, does that, in the arts too, does that hinder our understanding of the foundations of these things? Like I'm saying, like, where does the criticism of progress become a fault rather than an acceptance of change and transformation? You know what I'm saying?
That's too complicated.
That's too complicated.
You got me. All I want is things that are alive and that connect people.
Okay.
And if you're going too fast, you won't be able to connect.
Yeah.
And if
wait, hold it. Underline that. Because that is true.
Yeah.
Karen, it's getting warm in here. What's going on?
Well, drink some water. Are you hot?
I'm trying. What's going on? Yeah.
Is it like,
wait,
is it the fire?
Wait.
Oh my gosh.
Put it out.
Do you feel that, Leonard? Is it getting hot? Oh, need some water.
Oh my gosh.
Whoa. Whoa.
Leonard, it's that time in the program where we have to do rapid fire.
Yep. It's your turn, Leonard.
I don't know if you know about this, but James calls out some terms or words, and we want you to, without thinking, react verbally or physically to these words. So, word association game. Okay.
Oh man.
Are you ready?
Some good ones, James.
What?
He's ready. Give him some good ones.
I got some good ones. Okay, so just off the top of your head, we want you to react to these things any way you want. Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. Eyes. Well, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I made that.
It's beautiful.
What wood is that made out of?
Redwood.
That's beautiful.
Oh my gosh.
How long ago did you make that, Leonard?
20 years.
20 years? That's a beautiful mask. Are you going to paint it or keep it rough like that?
Keep it rough.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Great.
Right. Back to the game.
All right. Well, we may have some commentary here. Sweat. Child. Nice. Elder. Failure. Beautiful. Laser leaf. Beautiful. I love it. Teacher. Language. Velvet sun. Velvet sun. Sun. Beautiful. Critic. Angry mythology. Mime.
What?
Mime. What? Mime. And finally, fame. All right. Very
Bravo,
good. Thank you very
bravo.
much. So we're going to have to say here that, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to see the wonderful reactions that Leonard was doing, you have to look at the video. Recording of this on our website, mimeradioshow.com, because on Spotify, you're not going to be able to take advantage of this. So,
yeah,
that was great.
That was a beautiful performance. You have a most amazing face.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Leonard, as we get older, how do we adapt?
Well, I work out every other day with weights.
Really?
Yeah. And stretching, and watch my diet. And I don't walk as much as I should because my friend's out of town, but got to keep moving. And being around young people is great.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I always say, be open. Keep your mind open.
Mm-hmm.
You know, keep your mind open. I'll tell you very briefly, the book I wrote about the Irish healer.
Yeah.
Which I have around here somewhere. You know, I spent 8 years researching the life of the Irish healer and wrote a book about him. And I met people, contemporaries who are healers. And I could tell you amazing stories of healings of which I witnessed that would put your eyebrows up. And there are people who just don't want to hear it. Interesting. And I say, no, just be open.
Yeah.
So all throughout life, just be open, because you never know what surprises you.
I think looking at the many different projects that you're involved in, and like you're over the course of your life, all the different types of occupations, art, pursuits that you've had, it's very clear that you've been open to whatever would come towards you, and it's a wonderful philosophy.
How would you, Leonard, taking the body of your artistic expression, how would you define yourself? Maybe that's too difficult, but in some ways, but maybe taking, let's say, as a performing artist, since this program is supposed to be about mime and physical theater, how would you define what you do in that realm, what you did or you do in that realm?
Follow your imagination.
Follow your imagination. But you're definitely very visual and you're definitely very physical. So you think that's hereditary, or that's a learned thing, or is that DNA, or is that we were in the USA, in the West?
DNA. Yeah.
There's a really interesting quote that you put on your website where it's part of it. He said it's from a review from LA. It says something, he speaks sometimes, therefore he cannot be a mime, which, I know James and I have a much wider definition of mime than some newspaper writers would, but it was definitely a writer that was trying to define what you do.
Of course, yes.
So the openness, the imagination, the hunger for connection, and the belief in the integrity of connection, I think that probably drives you, correct?
Absolutely.
Everything you do, even to the chocolate club, correct?
Absolutely. The chocolate club happened by accident. My research into the Irish healer happened by complete accident, and I just followed it. I mean, to be very brief, my research on the Irish healer happened from a footnote I read in the book that mentioned his name and got me interested. I went, what? And one thing led to another. 8 months later, I was in Ireland.
Yeah. And your heritage, your heritage is from Russia or Eastern Europe, correct? I mean,
Ukraine and Poland.
yeah.
My mother was born in Ukraine.
Have you traveled a lot? Like, where in the world is the favorite place that you went that your performing took you?
Oh gosh, it's hard to say. With George Coates, we performed in Alhambra, Spain. That was great.
Yeah.
How so? Why was it great?
Well, it's a beautiful city. Beautiful city. The stage was weird. It was very raked like this. And we had a big object on the stage on wheels. So that was crazy. But I loved Alhambra. And again, I love urban settings that have an intimacy to them. To get back to that. And Alhambra has that in spades, as many old places do.
What's your favorite, like, different cultures have sort of different ways of reacting to performing. Where was the best sort of connection with the audience?
I can't say. As long as they're connecting to you.
Doesn't matter.
Of course. No.
It's not a culture.
How do you think audiences have changed, Leonard, over the years?
Oh, I've not performed enough in the last years to really say, but, I mean, so I can't say, like, when we performed, we had good audiences. They seemed to appreciate what we like, and performances differ. You do one show and the audience likes it this way, another show, the audience likes it that way. I really can't say.
Yeah, I'm not sure audiences are as patient as they used to be.
Okay.
Maybe because things are moving so fast, like we've talked about.
That would make sense. That would make sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
go ahead, Karen.
No, I was just going to ask our favorite crowning question
I was going to ask you if you had any disaster stories about
yes,
in your performance experience. This the eco rap is a very interesting. We haven't talked about that. Your eco rap project.
Yeah,
that you did
tell
for
us
a
about
few
that.
years, and then it seems you burned out on that, or you needed to take a break from that, from what I've read. But can you talk about that?
Well, it was very simple. I had an idea.
You had with that?
Yeah, I had an idea of. I directed a show for the Pickle Family Circus, and I had a rap group in there, and they were all African American rapping. I thought, gee, that's interesting. And then I got the idea to take kids from, underserved communities and put them on a bus with an ecologist, take them around their neighborhood and show them where all the poisons are, because the ecological situation in those neighborhoods is far worse than in many other neighborhoods. They're disadvantaged, and then have them write a rap about it. And that's what we did. I picked 4 neighborhoods in the Bay Area where you had seriously disadvantaged youth who were rappers, put them on a bus with a trained environmentalist, show them the waters with the poison, the smokestacks with the poison, blah, blah, blah. And they wrote a rap, and then we put on a concert, a public concert, free to the public, where they could perform. And it was phenomenal. The reaction was phenomenal. And I did that for 5 years. We did 3 big festivals. And then we had one group which we sent 10 kids to a big rap festival in Stuttgart, Germany. These are kids who are having a tough time living on the streets of the Bay Area here, San Francisco and Oakland. And they're on an airplane going to Germany. That turned their life around. Really amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And then we brought rappers from Germany over here who were rapping about social issues. One of those rappers from Germany is now one of the biggest rappers in the country. So it was getting young kids with something to say, but with no way to say it. We gave them a voice.
Yeah.
And how does one move on from that? Like, that seems like a very consummate experience, incredible energy you have to invest. It's very emotional. And how does one move on from that? Like, which you did after 5 years. What was the trigger that?
Well, because a lot of people gave me criticism because I was a white guy doing things for the community of color.
Yeah.
And I heard from various people, Lenny, you got to give it back to the community. Here, I mean, I was working for practically nothing, working off inspiration, giving a voice to kids, getting them on a stage in a big space, public space outside in San Francisco, getting a media. It was great. So
was that disappointing to you? Was it very complex and?
Well, people just they said give back. So I gave it back to the community, and then it sank. The community couldn't do it because no one was as crazy as me. And I had a partner also, Michael Freed.
Yeah.
We were together.
Yeah.
We were two crazy guys. So then it sank afterwards, and it was too bad because it was great.
It sounds like a wonderful program that you created.
Yeah. What advice would you give to younger people today in terms of pursuing an arts career or a physical theater career? What would you say to them today?
Well, find your master.
Find your master.
Find the person you want to work with. Stick with it. Put your digital phone down. I talk to Miles about that all the time. It's like drinking Coca-Cola 24 hours a day. It tastes great, but it's bad for your health.
Yeah.
So in carefully dosed measure, it can be all right. Slow down, but find your teacher and take it in.
Do you feel being an older artist here, like all of us here, well, you and I are older than Karen, but
that's okay.
do you feel that this advice that one might give is going to go on deaf ears more, or has that always been the case with ancient advice by the elders? I mean,
well,
how do we get through to the younger generation?
I never got advice from elders.
That's my point. How do we? I mean, do we count anymore?
I don't think elders ever counted. It's all happenstance. I saw Marcel Marceau and Laurel Hardy. They were my elders, and it was by happenstance. They didn't come to me and say, watch us. I just happened to have the opportunity to watch them, and they inspired me.
So what should we do as elders? What should we do to be healthy?
All we can do is be out there. Like I tutor at a school once a week here in a little town 20 minutes from here. Miles is a student there. I work with third graders. I go out there every day and I got a magic trick. And I got a different magic trick. And they call me Magic Man. So the one you saw with that disappearing thing, that was one. Here's another one I got. See this?
Yeah.
Put this in here. Okay, I got to get this in here. See it go through? See it go through?
Yeah.
Through. And then bang, bang, up. How'd that happen? They go, wow. So I'm Magic Man. Kids love me. You just be there. And then you talk to them. And they take on who you are. Whatever wholeness, whatever goodness, whatever connection. And
will there ever be a time to stop, do you think?
No, of course
artists?
No, I don't think so. I think he's going to go on forever. That's a great philosophy. It's a great, great feeling.
My life motto, find your inner maniac. All the fun goes to the obsessed.
That's a great finale. That little, say it again, Leonard.
Find your inner maniac. All of the fun goes to the obsessed. That's why my book is called My Brain on Fire, Paris, and Other Obsessions. Ask him the
last question, Karen. Ask him the last question.
Okay. Leonard, what do you want to be when you grow up?
When I figure it out, I'll let you know.
Bravo. Thank you so much, Leonard. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
My great pleasure. Thank you.
My radio show, ladies and gentlemen. Leonard Pitt. Thank you, Leonard.